Hi again. Here we are to continue with our video tutorial on Float and CSS. And here you can see I've got a similar example to the last example. This example has a series of boxes. In the last example, I set the height of the box, right? In this example, I did not set the height, but instead I put an H1 and a paragraph inside every box. And I just used some Greek text, right, to mock it up. And so you can see that some of the boxes, like this one has 3, 4, 5, 6 lines, and this one has 5 lines, and this one has 4 lines, and then this one has 7, I guess, right? So they're all different sizes, okay? So each box is a different size. This is a more realistic example. So if you were actually creating a grid like this, you would not set the height. You would usually be getting the height, determined by the amount of text or the amount of, content that you had. Okay, and that's kind of more realistic. Sometimes you can set the height, it depends on your design constraints, right? But, a lot of cases you're going to have, content coming from somewhere, and that's going to determine how tall something needs to be. We can always set the width, like that's fine for us. But the height, though, needs to be flexible. That's kind of how we read and how the pages work out, right? So anyway, so I've got these guys here. Let's go back and look at our page here. So you can see essentially, I've got what I had before. Each one of these divs is the same. It's just got a div with class box, an H1, and then a paragraph with some Greek text in it, okay? They all look the same, right? So they're all the same layout. And then here I did the, some basic styles. So I set the main box to 900 wide and gave it margin auto and a border and a background color. And then I set the width of the box to, 300 minus 20 pixels, right? And then I gave it a margin of 10, but I left float out. So let's add float and see what happens. Okay, so now let's float the boxes. So I'll save that. I'll go back here and refresh. And this is not what we expect. Okay, right? We actually want this box right here should have been there, right? Let's just double check it. Like, what if I go in here and I say, you are box number 1, you are box number 2, 3, and 4, and this one should have been the first one in the second row, and 5. Let's just number them 6, and 7, right? 8 and 9. Okay, so I'll save those. And this is 1, 2, 3, 4. Wait, 4 should be over here, right? And then 5 is down here, but it should really be here. And then 6 should be at the end of the row. So what's happening? Okay. Again, let's review how float works. So the easiest way to think about it, and this is the way that I think about it, is, imagine that you have this box right here, right? The red box. And what you're doing when you're floating it, or what the computer is doing, is it's putting it all the way at the bottom here. If it's float left, it's taking it all the way to the right, and then it's pushing it up on the page. This is the first one, so imagine all these other ones are missing, right? They haven't been placed yet. And it pushes it all the way up the page as far as it can go until it runs into something. And in this case, it runs into the top of the thing here, right? Except for its margin runs into the top, so it stops right about here, right? And then what happens is it slides it all the way over to the left because it's floated left, and it ends up there. And then the same thing happens with this guy. So this guy starts down here, he moves all the way up to the top, and then he slides over until he bumps into this guy, and they recognize each other because they're in the same club. They're both floated left. And then the same thing happens here. So it slides up, and then this one can't move over, and there's just enough space here for it, so it fits right there. If there's not enough space, this guy would end up, moving over here, right? So now what happens with number 4? Okay, well, what happens with number 4 is it does the same thing. It slides all the way up until it bumps into the bottom of number 3, and then it tries to slide over. And what happens, and you can't really see it because it's the margin right here, like this margin sticks up a little higher, and it gets caught on the corner here, right? And it can't go past this guy. So it fits right into this little notch here, and then it gets stuck. And then what happens is this one Number 5 starts at the bottom here, slides up, hits the bottom of 4, and then gets pushed way over to the left, and then 6 and 7 follow, right? Okay. So maybe that explains this, right? So how do you fix this? There's a couple ways you can do it. Okay. The first way, I'll do 2 examples of this. Okay. So the first way to fix it is to add a clear after each row. So if we've got 3 boxes in a row, that's box number 1, 2, and 3. And then what I would do here is I would add an empty div, not a dialog, a div, and give it class clear. Now you remember I defined class clear here, so this is left over from the last example, right? Okay, and it just says clear both. So what I'm saying is I'm going to put a clear element after the 3 elements in the first row, and this will just be invisible because it's empty, but it has to clear these guys, and now when these boxes slide up, they'll bump into the bottom of this, and then they'll have to run over, right, to the left and not get caught, okay? So then let's do this. Now we got box 4, 5. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? So I'm just going to copy this guy, and 6. So that's our second row. And then we'll add another clear div here, and then I've got boxes 7, 8, and 9, and I already put a clear here to make sure the outer container gets around the bottom. Okay, so we'll save that, and then we'll refresh it, and everybody looks the way they should, right? Why? Because we've got an element here, right? You can't see it, it's invisible, okay? And it is clearing these 3, and so when box 4, 5, and 6, get slid up from the bottom, they have to stop at that clear element, and then they slide over, and then the same thing happens here on this row. Okay, so anyway, hopefully that's helpful for you. And you can use the inspector to find these elements and kind of test them too if you want. So, if you're not sure, you could go in here and you could see there's box 1, 2, 3, and then there's the clear element. You can see it's 900 by 0 wide. Like I can't really see it, but it's there. Okay, so anyway, thanks for watching, and I hope that helps clarify some of the things with clear and float.